Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and this is a flip of the Spellbinders February 2025 club kits. As per usual for my flip videos, I'll be making at least one flat, one layered, one interactive, and one pop-up card. In this video today, I'll actually show 5 cards that feature the clear Stampin' Die of the month, the small die of the month, large die of the month, and the 3D embossing folder of the month. Here's a quick look at all 5 cards, and because my flip videos do tend to be a little bit on the long side, I will timestamp or bookmark it. That way, if there's one card in particular you want to see me make, you can just hover over the timeline and skip straight to that video. Now, without further ado, let's make these. So let's get started with my flat card. If you caught my flip video of the not too shabby box of the month, I am going to actually mimic those cards in a way because I thought that it would be fun just to create the same flip but using different products and give you an idea that really these flip videos, you can use whatever products that you have in your stash and create some very similar cards. So for my flat card, I am going to do some watercoloring with the clear stamp of the month. I really think that these bunnies they're pretty darling. They kind of look like storybook illustrations, and that's why I thought that the watercolor look would be really nice. So I'm using the VersaFine Onyx Black pigment ink. This is the perfect ink to use with your water-based medium because it won't, if you give it time to dry, it won't actually move once you've got water applied to it. I'm going to leave my stamp in the stamp positioning tool just in case I need to overstamp when I'm done. Sometimes you might find that you need to do that if some of your pigment actually kind of dulls that black ink a little bit, but at the end of the day, it actually turned out that I didn't need to stamp it again. I'm gonna today do my watercoloring with the Faber-Castell Albert Durr watercolor pencils, and I feel like these are a little bit easier for me to do watercoloring with because you can just do a little bit of messy coloring, and I actually leave quite a lot of the watercolor paper uncolored, and then with a watercolor brush I just dissolve all of that lovely pigment and then I move it towards the areas where I didn't actually scribble on any color. And it really just depends on how pigmented you want the final illustration to be, because if you use a lot of water then it's going to be a lot less pigmented, and if you use more of your pencil, then especially these Albert Durr watercolor pencils, there's the payload on the color is quite a lot. I mean, it's very, very pigmented. You can see I'm barely scratching on any, and as soon as the water hits it, it just dissolves and moves really easily across the watercolor paper. And I really think that watercolor paper is perfect for this. I'm not using a ton of water, so you could probably use plain cardstock as well, but I just really love how these watercolor pencils just move across watercolor paper. So even though I don't need to overstamp my bunny because I used some pretty light colors, I did put this back in so that I could stamp out the sentiment. And this is going to be a nice, clean and simple card. I'm not that great at clean and simple, but I really love this look, and I did something very similar in my earlier flip video and definitely wanted to do more of it. I think it almost looks like it's a page out of a storybook, so really happy with how that one turned out. Okay, so now onto my layered card. And in fact, I'll have two layered cards in this video. This first one is actually going to be some more watercoloring, but this time I am going to use my Distress watercolor pencils. And I'm going to do a technique that, well, I know I've known about this technique for a long time now, but I don't know that I've actually ever done it. I've seen a lot of tutorials from, I think it's Art Impressions. They do a lot of this really fun watercolor technique where I think they use an ink pad a lot of times, but you ink up your stamp and then you give it a spritz of water. And then when you go to stamp it, because it's a little bit watery, you don't get like a crisp, clear lines. You get more watery lines. And it almost has the effect of like a blurred, kind of almost like a bokeh effect, so that you can do that as the background to suggest that there's like a field of flowers, for example. And then you can ink up without spritzing the water and get a more crisp impression. So I'm going to give that a go. And instead of using an ink pad, I will use my Tim Holtz Distress color watercolor pencils. So I've started by stamping out another bunny from the clear stamp of the month. These bunnies I think are just so darling, and I think the little chickies are really cute as well. And so what I did was stamped it in VersaFine Onyx Black onto watercolor paper, and then I stamped it again onto just some masking paper. You can use any type of masking paper. I actually use Avery repositionable full sheet labels because it's a lot less expensive than actual masking paper. And then I fuzzy cut on the line, and this way I can block off the bunny, and I'll color up the bunny at the end. But as I'm doing this technique, I want to make it feel like it's a field of flowers. And so I will be stamping right across, right over the bunny, so that it looks like there's some of the flowers behind that bunny as well. And one of the things that I found a little bit challenging with this technique is knowing how much water to use, because if you use too much water, it's just going to be like a blobby mess. And the other thing that I didn't consider was to also give some adequate drying time in between layers, because I'm using green and pink, and because those are complements of each other, if they combine, you're gonna get like a muddy color, which I kind of did a little bit. But once I stamped that out a couple times in the background, now what I'm doing is inking very carefully with my Memento dye-based ink. And here I am doing it dry. So everything is dry. I haven't spritzed the stamp with any water. And the idea is that this gives the more crisp, clean lines, so that it looks like those are a little bit more in the foreground, and the ones that I stamped that were more watery are the ones that are part of the background. And now that I have a little bit of grass to ground everything, I'm gonna peel off the mask of the bunny, because there's lots of flowers and greenery that's stamped right over top of him. But once you peel off the mask, then the underneath it should be totally clear, and it'll look like the bunny is in front of all of those flowers. And so now I can actually color in the bunny himself. So I don't tend to do a lot of masking, but it's always really fun when it works out, and it's done a good job of actually covering everything. I wasn't too sure, but I didn't use a lot of water, so that's always the thing that I worry about, is water sort of getting underneath the mask. But I didn't use a ton of water, and I also didn't stamp a lot over the bunny, so everything turned out just fine. I do need a little bit of a sentiment on this, so I'll put this back in my stamp positioning tool and then stamp out a sentiment. And then all I'm gonna do, because this is my layered card, although this could easily have also been another flat card, but I am going to frame this one so that it's got this border of green, which matches that dark green that I stamped with originally in the flowers. And this is another pretty simple card. I like how it turned out. I like the technique. I think I need to practice this technique a little bit more just to get a better feel for it. But I had a lot of fun making that card. This is my second layered card, and it's going to be a fast one because I've already better pressed a sentiment. This is a bit of a sneaky peek at an upcoming release. So this will come out on February 10th, and it is Justine's Farm, which is a better press collection. And it was the perfect sentiment to go with these really cute legs, I guess, but I made some of Dorothy's red slippers here. So this features the small die of the month, and you have a die. There's lots of dies, and you can kind of use these and assemble them sort of however you'd like, because she doesn't necessarily need to be wearing the socks. Although I looked up some reference art of The Wizard of Oz and Dorothy just to see what color, because I didn't think that she wore socks. I knew she had that sort of blue checkered dress, but I didn't know that she had socks, so I'm glad I looked up the reference for it. But here are all of the dies and how they get assembled. So there's a die for her leg, the bottom portion of her leg, a die for basically her sock, and for the top of her sock you can do some different ribbing and little frills if you want. Then there's the slippers themselves, so you've got those, and then there's the sole of the shoes. So really fun, great look. I do love that Spellbinders has all of these different feet, legs, so we've gotten them several times now in different club kits, so I really love that they just continue to add to that. Now onto my interactive card. So this is going to be a fun one. I have these micro beads, and I thought I would pull out some that, because they're very pastel in color, I thought it would be great for an Easter card. I had the idea in mind that what I would do is use the egg dies, because you get in the large die of the month 3 different size eggs, but there's the outline and then a second plate that will cut a pattern into the egg. So I'm just going to use the outline to make a shaker card. And I was trying to think about interesting patterns that I could cut into, say, like a card panel and do multiple eggs, maybe just dropping down the card. But I think I came up with an idea that is going to be kind of fun. So I'm using my palette scout to actually pull out some colors that would go well with the micro beads that I happen to have. And I have a separate video, a first look video on the palette scout. If you want to learn all about that, that's a separate video on my channel, and I'll tell you all about how to use it. And I'm trying to incorporate it in like my day-to-day crafting to see how I like it. And I thought it was a lot of fun to use. Now, surprisingly, check it out. I did a pretty good job of actually finding some solid color cardstock in my stash that actually matches the color cards. And so I'm really happy. This looks really lovely. It looks very bright and very springtime, which I cannot wait for, because at the moment we just got some snow here in Washington State. kind of unusual. So I cannot wait for spring to come. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, here's my idea. I am going to kind of create 4 mini shakers. And so I am going to use the medium size egg, and I've cut these pieces to 1 3/4 wide by 2 1/8 tall. And I'm going to cut 4 of them. So they're all going to be the same size. And then once I have these rectangles trimmed down, then I'm going to cut an egg aperture out of each of them. So I'm gonna do my best to center the egg die, and then cut that out of all 4 of these little pieces of cardstock. So you could really, if you had scraps, you could definitely do this with your scrap paper, because you don't need a lot of it, and you can do this with really any shape, I think, and any color palette. I think this is one of those cards that it just feels like it's really easy to replicate and have it themed any which way you'd like. So the way that I like to do my shakers is I like to actually use 2 layers of acetate, and I would definitely suggest this method for this card in particular, because I've got 4 mini shakers essentially, and I feel like it's going to be really hard to make the shaker in the traditional way, where you actually will kind of put your shaker bits on your card base and then put your shaker frame on top. I think that's going to be really hard with such small little shakers. And as well, I think it's going to be really hard because I'm using micro beads and they tend to roll around everywhere. So what I'm going to do is actually make 4 shakers that are self-contained. And that way I can position them onto my card base much more easily once they are essentially, complete shakers and are like a little card element of their own. So what I've done is lined the back of each of these card little panels with some clear acetate, nothing super thick. It can just be nice flimsy acetate or just plastic packaging, anything that's nice and clear. Then I've got, this is about 2, maybe 2.5 millimeter thick foam, and I have surrounded all 4 edges. Really, the key to any shaker is that you don't have any gaps in your foam that are surrounding that open aperture in the center. Now, what I also did was add just some squares of foam at the bottom of the egg. The reason for that is because when you put your shaker fill in, it's gonna generally, just depends on how they're holding the card, but if they're holding the card upright, the shaker bits are gonna fall to the bottom. And anything that falls behind the egg aperture that's been cut out of these card pieces, it's not going to be visible. So it's kind of a waste of shaker bits to go into that space. So if you add those little foam squares, it just sort of blocks out that space so that your shaker bits can't go there. And that way you don't end up having to need quite as much shaker fill. Totally optional to do. But I always try to do that where at the bottom, I don't worry about it too much at the top, because most of the time when you're holding a card, it's kind of upright. And so everything is going to tend to fall more towards the bottom. But I like to always do it at the bottom, and that's just to conserve on my shaker bits. So I've got all 4. Oh, the last step is to actually close everything off with a second layer of acetate. So now all 4 of my little tiles here are little mini shakers, and it's going to be a lot easier to actually position these on my card front. Now, here's the thing I wish I had maybe thought about a little bit more in advance. So, if you're going to do this or something similar, then I would highly recommend before even making your shaker, position where you want each of the four rectangles. And what I ended up doing was, the egg that was die cut out of these panels, I ran them through the die cutting machine a second time with the die that actually cuts the pattern into it. And I was thinking I would just actually use that on the inside of the card, but then I had the idea of, well, what if this is behind? Because when I started to put these little shaker windows onto my card front, I didn't really like the look of the white behind there. And so the easiest thing to try first was to put these little eggs that just fell out back in. And so I like the look of it and I like mixing the colors. So what I would recommend doing though is before you make your shaker, position each of these rectangles and then glue the eggs back inside so that it's exactly where you want it to be, because it's going to be an exact fit. It was a little bit harder to do with the shaker already fully assembled. I kind of had to hold everything together, and using liquid glue helped a little bit because then I could still nudge things around a little bit, but it was kind of tough to get everything in place, and it was a little bit messy too because I was getting glue just all over myself and all over the card front. So I would definitely recommend do that part first, glue down those eggs first, or whatever aperture if you're not using eggs for your card, and then make your shakers and position them or glue them onto your card front. So the large die of the month, it's just got a lot going on here, and I'm barely using anything from it. My pop-up card will feature the bunny that you can assemble, so that's going to be a really fun one coming up next. But what I've done is assemble some of the small little flowers that come in this set, and as well there's actually this lovely banner. It's a nice wavy banner, and there are 2 sentiments that come in this set. So Happy Easter is one of them, and Hello Spring is the second sentiment. So I always find that these the sentiment die plates that kind of deboss, I feel like they look best on cut into a mirror cardstock. So I actually cut it twice. I cut it out of a lavender pearlescent cardstock, and then I cut it out of silver. And I was intending for the silver to actually be on the bottom as a little bit of a highlight, and then the lavender pearlescent cardstock to be on top. But surprisingly, it's actually more legible, the lettering on the silver. So I went with that on top. And I think ultimately that looks better too, because I cut from a very similar shade of lavender, these dainty little flowers. And I think it would have been too much lavender if the lavender banner was on top. So this actually turned out really to be better ultimately. So really, this was a fun card. I mean, it took a while to make those little mini shakers, but it was a lot of fun, and I like the look of it at the end of the day. They're really fun and bright. Okay, so now onto my pop-up card, and this again will feature the large die of the month, and this is the extra bonus die set that you get if you are a deluxe caboodle subscriber, meaning that you get all 10 of the Spellbinders club kids. You get some bonus goodies, and this is one of them. So I think it's meant to be like a little chick, and it's one of the things I really love is that everything is so well coordinated, because this looks a lot like the illustrated chick that's in the clear stamp of the month. It kind of has the same styling and the same sort of chubbiness. It's really adorable. And the large die of the month, I'll use it on this card later, it too has a little chick that is very small. And what's cool about both of them is that they have their wings spread out, so you can kind of make it like they're flying, but the legs are separate, so you can also put some legs on them and have them standing. So for my pop-up cards, I do like for the outside of the card or the front of the card to be pretty plain and simple. So what I'm going to do is I've got white on white. I've white embossed the 3D embossing folder, which is this really it almost looks like it could be sort of like a chain link fence, but where the overlaps are, it's actually like a little bow. So it's really lovely. You can use it really any time of year, and it's just a really nice all over pattern. And but it is directional. I actually the first panel that I embossed, I had it going the wrong way. So you do want to take note that it is a directional pattern. And again, I've used the same Hoppy Easter debossing plate and banner, and I'm gonna add that right towards the bottom here with my little, so it's meant to be like a little chick, but I thought I would just make it a little baby bird, like a baby bluebird. So you can really, I guess, interpret these however you'd like, but I thought it would be cute just as a little bird, because what I wanted to do was have the big one, the die cut version that comes in the extra bonus die set. That's this one here, and he's going to be on the front of the card. And then just for some continuity, I'm going to take the little version that's part of the large die of the month, and I'm going to put the little one flying on the inside. So it's almost like he's flown into the inside of your card. And so he's going to be hanging out with this bunny, which, oh my gosh, this bunny is just too cute. And so there's several dies that make up the bunny. I've already made the little, you can see the little matching bird there. He does have some legs if you want to add some legs to him. The bunny, though, has a dancing mechanism on the legs, so you can make this bunny dance if you'd like. I haven't. He's all glued together, the one that I've assembled. And there are some different outfits for the bunny, which I think are super cute. So there's some overalls, there's some shorts and a t-shirt. There's also a little dress as well. So you can kind of dress up this little bunny however you'd like. And I also think it's really cute that there's a little paint can and as well a paint brush, and the paint splatters are all on a single die. So you've got the paint that's kind of spilling out of the can. You've got some paint that's kind of dripping down. It's perfectly shaped to fit the large egg. And there's even some paint that you could put on the paint brush, and then there's a drop of paint that you can add as well. Really, really cool. So much detail in this die set. So I'm going to start off with my pop-up mechanism. I'm going to make myself like a little bench. And this is just 3 inches, and I end up cutting it down to 3 by 5.5, and I'm going to score 1/4 of an inch on both edges along that 3-inch edge. And then I will score at, I think I ended up scoring at 2 and, 1 3/4. So score at 1/4 of an inch, 1 3/4 of an inch, and 2 3/4 of an inch. So that's going to give you 2 1/4-inch glue tabs. And then the top of the bench, like the top of the table, will be about 1.5 inches. And then this will be 1 inch tall or high. So normally when I do these pop-up mechanisms, I actually glue, or I actually cut this so that the glue tabs will actually go all the way to the fold of the card, but because I'm using pattern paper and I'm trying to conserve on this pattern paper, just trying to have my supplies stretch a little bit. That's why I went with just quarter inch glue tabs. So if you're gonna do that, then you need to kind of mark where it should be glued down, because normally if this was cut so that the glue tab goes all the way to the fold, you would just line it up with the fold. But wherever you position it, once you get one glue tab glued down, then you just need to apply glue to the other glue tab, fold this, and then fold your card down on top of it. And when you're done, it should pop up a little something like this, so that you've got this nice 3D sort of space to work with. And so now comes the fun. Originally, what I was thinking was the bunny was gonna be in the foreground, and then it's like he's selling Easter eggs, but he's like in charge of painting them up, and this is his shop where he's gonna paint some Easter eggs and then sell them. That's the story. But I didn't think ahead that this bunny is big. Fully assembled, where he's got where he's standing, this bunny measures 4¼ inch. So he's pretty tall, this bunny. And you'll see I'm gonna actually have to go with a plan B later. But what I'm doing, because I don't realize this, even at this point I haven't realized it, I am going to make another pop-up mechanism so that my bunny can be standing in front of this table. So I've just got some clear acetate, and I scored every 3/4 inch so that I have 4 sections that are 3/4 inch wide. So I cut this acetate about 1/2 inch by 3 inches, and along the 3-inch edge, I scored at 3/4 inch, 1.5, 2 1/4, and I cut 2 and scored 2, exactly like this. Then you just mount and fold everything. So this is how I would normally make a pop-up, so that you have this nice little kind of square. And then the 2 sections on either ends, those become your glue tabs. And so that's where you want to apply your adhesive. Then when you go to actually adhere this to the inside of your card, you can put those ends right up against the panels, wherever the fold is. In this case, what I'm using as the fold is the table, so that when the front of the card pulls up the table, that's going to in turn pull up these pop-up mechanisms. So once you have one sort of platform installed, you can use that to attach other platforms, and then that gives you like some different like a foreground, a midground, and a background, so that you can really create a very 3-dimensional scene. And that's the beauty of a pop-up card, is to create a fun little scene and have a lot of dimension. At least that's the fun of it that I enjoy. So I'm going to glue just one of these ends down, and just like the other one, I'm going to fold it and then fold my card on top of it. And that makes sure that this whole card can fold down flat eventually. So that's why I never really, for pop-ups, I never glue anything when it's upright and open and in its 3D form. I always adhere things flat, because I want the card to be able to close down flat, since I ship most of my cards out. So this one, oh, speaking of shipping, it does end up being kind of bulky in the center here. So, and kind of heavy too, because there's a lot of paper on the inside of this card. So this is when I realized, my my bunny is way too tall. So here's the thing. Whenever you attach an element to a pop-up stand or anything on the inside of your card, you need to be checking to make sure that your card, when it's closed, that whatever you've just added, whatever element that you've added, is actually going to stay hidden when the card is actually closed. And it's deceptive because I like to build the scene when everything is open and I can kind of see how it's all going to look when it's open. But you need to kind of always remember to close your card every once in a while and make sure that it's going to stay inside the confines of your card when it's closed, because it's kind of deceptive. It might look like it's going to sit inside your card, but because of all of the extra dimension that we've added with these pop-up mechanisms, you know, these eggs, for example, when they stand up, they look like they would fit perfectly fine in the card, but really they have to be able to fold down flat again. And that's where you need to really make sure that when it's folded down flat, it still stays within the perimeters of your card. So I kind of had to mix things up a little bit, but I like how it turned out. Because I had to put the bunny in the background, because putting him in the foreground, like that big egg, the teal egg, that's as tall as an element. That's like the maximum height of the element that can be added to that pop-up stand, because when that closes, you're really only looking at something like the space in front of that pop-up stand is how tall it can be, essentially, because it needs to fold down flat, and that's the space that the eggs will go when it's folded down flat. And so there was no way the bunny was going to fit on that pop-up stand, because the bunny is 4¼ inches tall, and that's basically the height of the card. So the only place that the bunny can go is the furthest in the background. So the bunny has been glued directly to the back of the card front, and now I can build everything else around it. So I've added another pop-up stand. This one I'm putting on top of the table so that it kind of looks like the egg that the bunny is currently working on is, the one that's on the table with him. And I wish I had thought about it earlier, but I feel like I should have cut the egg out of white cardstock and had the dripping paint of purple to make it seem like he's only just now painting it purple. Like all of the eggs start white, and then this bunny's job is is to color them. So I wish I had done that, but I didn't. And I still like the look of it, but I think it would have been a little bit nicer if that egg was white. So I wanted to, as I mentioned, add the little bird who is on the outside. And this, again, it looked like once it's open that he would fit just fine, but I kept on having to nudge it down further and further so that when the card is closed, that bird that's just kind of popping up, it's just on a bit of acetate that I glued to the back of the lavender egg. And that way, it looks like the bird is just hanging out flying in midair. Kind of brings a little bit of the continuity of the outside of the card into the inside. And then I wanted to add another little pop of orange, because then I have like that rule of thirds, but I also have orange all the way in the background, which is part of the bunny's shirt. I've got the midground of where the tabletop is, and then the foreground of the cluster of 3 eggs. And so I go from like the largest item in the back, and then the orange gets progressively kind of smaller. So that way, if your eye is kind of caught on that color, it helps to kind of move your eyes around. And that way you can kind of scan the whole scene. All right, so here's a final close-up look at all 5 of my cards. So this is my flat card, which features the clear stamp of the month with a little bit of watercoloring. And then I've got 2 layered cards. This first one features the same clear stamp of the month and just another fun little watercoloring technique and a different stamp in the set. Both of the sentiments are also from the clear stamp of the month. My second layered card features the small die of the month and a sneaky peek at Justine's Farm collection that's coming out on February 10th. This was a lot of fun. I love the sparkly shoes. And my interactive card is a shaker card that features 4 mini shakers. I really like how this one turned out because it was nothing like what I had in my head when I first started to sit down and make this card. And it turned out so much better than what I was thinking I wanted to make initially. So love how that one turned out. And then finally, my pop-up card, which features the large die of the month and the free die set that comes if you are a deluxe Caboodle subscriber and you get all 10 of the club kits. I had a blast making this set of cards. If you want to see a similar set of cards, check out my flip of the Not Too Shabby box of the month. I put that one out just a few days ago, and it features the February box of the month. And you'll see the same style almost of cards, but using different products. So I hope you enjoyed this flip video. I'll leave links to all of the products in the description box below in case you want to check any of them out for yourself. And until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.